like I said with Earth Demon over on Twitch, I copied and pasted the comment so I could actually highlight it itself, saying good on them for learning from Final Fantasy 14. And I echo that because my answer to does Final Fantasy 14 need a roadmap like this? Not for me personally, but you make a good point for you never know where each player is coming from. I think Final Fantasy 14, what Yoshi-P has done, has set a new mold, a new standard for MMORPGs. I think Blue Protocol specifically is learning from how Yoshi-P has communicated, and it's going to be interesting once that game's out in the wild if they follow up on a similar style of updates, in that regards. And those lessons from Yoshi-P, in my perspective, are communication, content, and consistency. Like he breaks it down in those three categories so well that even during a pandemic, everybody's out there looking at Final Fantasy 14 going like, how are they still making content? Well, so they have a plan in place. The only thing that slowed them down was learning how to do remote work, as opposed to like not just learning how to do remote work, but trying to figure out what you're doing in the first place. And so all those things I've looked at that as like from an industry perspective. I hope more people study what Yoshi-P has done. It's not going to make everybody happy because typically the counter argument from somebody who wants more of the classical or old school MMO style back is they get frustration in the seasonal model of it. The ability to take breaks, right? Some players are looking for a world to get lost in and become their be all end all. This is the game I play for 15 years and I never play any other games. But outside of that small minority, like Yoshi-P comes in with the mantra, yeah, go ahead and take breaks. Like it's easy to step away and you're not going to be punished for doing so outside of owning a house. Like that is the one and only thing that contradicts like that gameplay style. And I saw actually Fusion tweeting out about it and angrily about how they're adding in more wards. He's like, this doesn't fix the problem. It's like every 14 player who doesn't have a house knows that adding more wards isn't going to solve it. But yeah, I think essentially when you look at MMOs out there, even New World, that same degree, like, hey, we're just going to keep making content and we're going to talk to you, and they do dev updates and more. I think that's going to be what you end up seeing with MMOs that become always at the forefront of your mind, right? Always at the forefront of your mind because there's always an update to talk about. There's always news to kind of get excited for. There's always something to go and do in the game, and it's always you're capable of taking a break and coming back.
Yeah, it can be very frustrating that this means they don't take risk and stuff, but that also assumes that you don't get to put any points on the board for risk here. So to counter that, like you don't know that, right? The trading post is all new content. So like a roadmap and predictability can still have new. People look at the predictability of 14 and some of them get very frustrated. It means they don't take risks, but that suddenly ignores everything that happened just because it was planned. Island Sanctuary was planned. It was still new. Criterion Dungeon was planned. It was still new. Crystalline Conflict was planned. It was still new. And so we can have experiments we can also have like fan service, right? Diving in ARR, the duty support system. These are love letters to the players, and yet they're still announced in advance. So I think to say that, like, my wife said she was getting me a Christmas gift and she got me these headphones. I knew she was getting me a Christmas gift. I knew that I would get it on Christmas Day. That did not take away any of the surprise or delight when I got a new set of headphones. So you can still have that and a plan. They're not mutually exclusive. So I would say to people that the repetition of 14 frustrates them, look at all the things that are not repeated. Look at all the things that are new. Bosges, Adnor, and Eureka, like those were new. Those were changes in the formula. Skysteel Tools and Ishgard Restoration was a change in the formula. So there can be minor changes. We just don't need to like tear down the sign and tear out all the furniture to change one item on the menu. It can still be a burger joint with burger written on the sign outside, and we can have a new burger added to the menu. So I think 14 has also proven that within that predictable model, they can still have inventiveness. They're not the only game that has roadmaps. They're just the game that you and I spend most of our time in. So it's where we see the pattern. It doesn't mean that's where every game has to be learning it from or mimicking or whatever. Because New World, for a lot of players, New World has a roadmap, and New World has surprises and delights along the way, both announced ones and unannounced ones. And for World of Warcraft, that seems like that's the model they're moving to. And I think, that word trust is what fixes a lot of it.
Yeah.
you got to build trust. And so having an opportunity to build trust is not always something the player doesn't want to have to be like, okay, I'm extending you a credit line of more trust. Now you need to fulfill it. Like this gives them 6 easy wins. You release all 6 of these, and each one of these matches the scorecard as listed, and you've scored points. And I don't want to necessarily have to be the one that defines your scorecard. Like you're the one that messed up. You're the one that wants me to trust you. Tell me what you're going to do, and then we can slate you against that. And so if they want more than 6 chances to earn trust, then tell me you're going to do more than 6 things. And each one of those is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And the thing I would say, especially about it, is that in this case, actions obviously speak louder than words. Trust is an actionable currency, as opposed to like you telling somebody something. You telling somebody something implies that there's already trust, that they're saying, hey, yeah, you said it. So to chat, like, you know, I've seen some comments saying like, hey, let's see if they stick with it after the first, 6 months and what happens. Yeah, let's see. And if they do, those are points. That's exactly what you want to see them do. And if they don't, the question ends up being, is it reasonable or is it unreasonable? Like do they fall off because they just had bad management and, et cetera? Or do they fall off because California fell into the ocean or something like that? Like, okay, like they had to relocate their headquarters and, things like that. Like we can understand life finds a way to kind of mess with the, even our best plans, but I think it's about action, and I think it kicks off with the winter update, and then it's going to build up momentum. And I think essentially by the time they hit like 10.15, if they you hit check mark on all these, by the time you hit this one, I think you're going to see like a momentum, and you're going to see an excitement building into the fall and season 3's update going throughout all of 2023.
I agree.
Is there anything else on the roadmap that we want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think this is the big ones. I think the fact that they're going to have story and quests at each stage. And I think the fact that they're going to be updating old content, refreshing old world holidays and things like that, are signs of a healthy MMO. I think investing in the narrative of your world is important, even as somebody who's been historically a story character, a story skipper. I've still valued that they're investing in it, just because it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the going back and thinking about old content, going back and fulfilling old promises, just because you missed the deadline, like heritage armor for humans and orcs has been a long time coming. And like, there gets to be that point. I called a friend recently that I hadn't called in like 2 or 3 years, and I had intended to stay in touch. And after I hadn't called him for 6 months, I felt bad. And so then I didn't call them, and I thought about them after it had been about a year, and then I felt worse. And so like, it just got harder and harder to pick up the phone, and yet I wanted them back in my life. And so like, at some point you just have to get over that. So if you've said, when you look at some of the promises that Final Fantasy 14 has felt they're getting, things like Carby glamours, at some point you have to go back and address those. Continuing to not address them doesn't make it better. Like, to somebody that was a promise, and you've continued to let go. Like, every year it stings. And so at some point you need to go back. And so I think this is also a chance where they're going back and doing some of that, as well as paying homage to old systems. The gray and white items are not usable as glamour transmog. So if you had items in Final Fantasy 14 like vendor trash that can't be worn, but you're like, I want to wear a mangy old boot. I caught it fishing. How come I can't wear this? They're adding that. And so now all those items are going to become equipable, which is really, really neat. Equipable and storable within your transmog menu, which is going to be just a wealth of things to go after for all the cosmetic chasers out there. So that's really exciting. Should be great. I think, just as a general thing, we don't have to go point by point on it, but the fact that it's filled with a little bit of content for every level of player,
mm-hmm.
Is really what stands out. Not only is it a consistent roadmap and a plan for the future, but that plan affects everybody.
Yeah. 2023 is going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see how WoW pulls it off, because overall, the sentiment that I continue to hear, absolutely positive. People are really enjoying it. And then if they can go in and you're looking at, 10.1 and people are like positive, that's fascinating. Like, that ultimately, that's going to be something that will, I think, lead into, You said it before, Dragonflight. It's not about Dragonflight. It's, about 11.0. And if they can build that momentum and rebuild that trust and have that excitement, 11.0 I think has the capacity to really shake the foundation of MMOs, especially for one that is this old. And 11.0 could be something that says, hey, just because we're old doesn't mean we don't have the capacity to really delight and surprise.